Okay, so in this video, we're actually going to be looking at the different parts of the right triangle, and then just look at working with some right triangles and using the Pythagorean theorem that we've started talking about to find the missing side of the right triangle. So first of all, we're going to go through and define the parts of a right triangle. So here's a picture right here. Go ahead and sketch this picture on your paper. But if you notice, we've got two sides that are labeled as legs and one side that is labeled as the hypotenuse. Okay, so we got the definitions over here. The legs are always, always, always going to be the two sides that make up the right angle. So if you look in the picture right here, here's your right angle. The two sides that make it up are the two legs. Your hypotenuse is always going to be the side that is opposite from that right angle. So if I start down here at this right angle and I go to the opposite side, that's always going to be your hypotenuse. Now, if you remember, we talked about the other day what the formula was for the Pythagorean theorem, and that was a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay, so now that we have the definitions for these, you could also write that as leg squared plus leg squared equals the hypotenuse squared. Okay, C is always, always going to be your hypotenuse. That's the longest side of the right triangle. So keep in mind, this formula only works when you have a right triangle, no other type of shape. And you're using it to find the missing length of one of the sides. So we're just going to work through a few examples and then we'll be good to go. Okay, the first example, we have this picture. Okay, first thing we need to do is figure out which side they are wanting us to find. So in this one, we have one side is 5 meters, another side is 12 meters, and then another side is labeled C. Now I want to figure out that C, is it a leg of the triangle or is it the hypotenuse? So I notice that it is the side that is opposite from the right angle. So C is my hypotenuse. So whenever I use my formula, my 5 and 12 are going to go where the A and B go. So we have 5 squared plus 12 squared equals C squared. And then just start to solve it. 5 squared, 5 times 5 is 25. 12 squared is 144. That has to equal C squared. Add these two together and you get 169 is C squared. But remember, we don't want to know what C squared is. We just want to know C. So to get rid of a squared, you have to take the square root. And the square root of 169 is 13. So the length of this side is going to be 13 meters. So we just plug the numbers in where they went on the formula and then just worked it out. Okay, moving on to example number 2. Now we have some fractions thrown in here, but it's going to be the exact same process. So first of all, here's the side that I'm trying to find. Notice it is opposite from the right angle, so that is my hypotenuse that I am trying to find. So in my formula, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A and b are going to be the two sides that I know. So 2/5 squared plus 3/10 squared has to equal c squared. Now, Whenever you're squaring a fraction, it's actually really easy because the exponent goes with both the numerator and the denominator. So 2 squared is 4, 5 squared is 25. So 2/5 squared is 4 25ths. We'll do the same thing over here. 3 squared is 9, 10 squared is 100. Now when we add these together, remember, in order for you to add fractions, you have to have a common denominator. And right now we don't have one. One is 25 and one's 100. But I do know that 25 will go into 100. So I can multiply both of these by 4. So that would become 16 100ths plus 9 100ths. And that has to equal c squared. Now we can go ahead and add them together. So 16 plus 9 is going to equal 25. So we have 25 over 100 equals c squared. And then again, to get rid of the square, we just take the square root. So I'm going to jump over here. Now, remember, when you take the square root of a fraction, you're actually taking the square root of the top and of the bottom. So the square root of 25 is 5, and the square root of 100 is 10. So 5/10 equals c. Now you should automatically notice that that is not in simplest form. That would reduce down to 1/2. So the length of this side right here would be 1/2 of an inch. All right, moving on to example number 3. Okay, again, here's the side we're looking for, and I'm noticing automatically that it is across from the right angle, so that's my hypotenuse. So as I fill in my numbers into the equation, my a and b are going to be the 8 and the 15. So 8 squared plus 15 squared has to equal c squared. And then just start to solve. 8 times 8 is 64. 15 times 15 is 225. Okay, add these together and you get 289 to be equal to c squared. And then remember, we have to take the square root of that. Probably one of the most common mistakes people make is they forget to take the square root of that. And then the square root of 289 is going to be 17. So again, our length for C is 17, and this time it would be labeled as feet. Okay, now the last example we're going to do is a little bit different. You'll see why here in just a second. If you look at the picture, everything we've done so far is we've been trying to figure out what the hypotenuse is, the side opposite the right angle. But this time we already know what it is. We are missing one of the legs. So our formula is still going to be set up the same way, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. But this time, since this is already labeled a, I'm just going to leave the a squared. Okay, my other leg is the 2.1 because remember, your two legs are the sides that make up the right angle. So 2.1 squared. And that has to equal your hypotenuse. Well, your hypotenuse is 2.9 squared. And then we just simply start to solve this. So a squared plus, well, 2.1 squared, 2.1 times 2.1. You can use your calculators on this. Okay, I just typed that in, 2.1 times 2.1, and you get 4.41. And then 2.9 times 2.9, you get 8.41. Okay, now notice our equation looks a little bit different. So we solve it just like we do any other equation. So the very first thing, my goal is to get that a by itself. So the very first thing I'm going to have to do is subtract 4.41. Those cancel. You have a squared equals 4.00, or just 4. And then again, we have to take the square root of that. And the square root of 4 is 2. So the length of this side is going to be 2, and we would label it as centimeters. So the main thing you've really got to pay attention to is what side you're trying to find. If you're trying to find a leg, or if you're trying to find a hypotenuse. You'll still set it up the exact same way. You just may have to solve it a little bit differently.